Doll Wars, Vigilus Defiant. Chapter 5, Chaos Ascendant. To any Imperial forces in range, I am Astropath Primus Helena Arcan of the Lunar Choir of Neovelum, Moon of Vigilus. Status update. We have suffered heavy losses. The forces of the Dark Powers rampage nearly unchecked across the planet. Necrons have risen beneath our hive spires, and while they have massacred the Genestealer cult sabotaging our efforts, they cannot be contained. Our last, best hope lies with the warriors of the Death Watch. Message repeats. To any Imperial forces in range, I am Astropath Primus Helena Arc.
Swift retribution from Watchmaster Zephyr. Confirm coordinates.
Captain Argentus here, Watchmaster. We are receiving you. You are on site. That mountain range is the last known location of the warband you engaged in Megiddo.
Those heretic Astartes must be hiding out in the cave system ahead. We'll dig them out, but the teleportarium's gonna need a lot of power to punch through all that rock. How are the modifications to the relays coming?
They are complete, Watchmaster. On your signal, we will divert power from void shields and life support to the teleportarium. You'll have your reinforcements exactly when you need them.
Good work, Captain. Have the tech priests ready and watching for our teleport beacons. All squads are reporting ready. We're about to move in.
Understood, sir. Good hunting.
Zephyr, wait.
What is it, Navigator?
This doesn't feel right. Something is off-kilter.
That's some very precise intel you've given me. I'll be sure to let the squads know.
I'm serious, Zephyr. The warp is in turmoil. I'd be a lot more comfortable if you hadn't sent Nicodemian and his flesh terrors back to the hive cities when you're going into close quarters like this.
Well, maybe if the Imperial forces on this backwater could find their asses with an auspex and a targeting beacon, I wouldn't have had to. I appreciate your concern, old friend, but we're the best. I'll be in touch as soon as we've mopped these traitors up.
Signal weakening. Location no longer precise.
They must be entering the cave system. Start the operations clock, and keep watch for those beacons.
Barometrics in flux. Atmospheric disruptions increasing.
What does that mean?
According to this, there's a storm system generating over the mountain range. Spontaneously. It's increasing in force. This shouldn't be possible. I need confirmation on this right now.
Teleportation beacon Alpha detected. Dispatching squad.
He doesn't usually call down a squad that soon, does he?
No, Navigator. He does not. Something...
Beacon Beta. Beacon Gamma, Beacon Delta detected. Dispatching squads.
Throne, that was every reserve squad we have. He's in trouble.
We must have faith in the Watchmaster, Navigator, and faith in the Emperor. Charge starboard lance batteries and intensify sensorium scans in case he needs orbital bombardment support.
There's nothing else we can do?
No. Now, we wait.
Hold them back! Hold them, damn your eyes! The interrogator chaplain fired his plasma pistol again, underscoring his words with a sizzling blue blast that melted the helmet of the nearest Death Guard, igniting the foul gases within and engulfing its head in fiery death. The Steel Legion soldiers cheered as it toppled and redoubled their lasgun fire into the approaching Plague Marines. It would not be enough. The roar of bike engines cut through the tumult as Sergeant Lucas and his Black Knights crested a hill to his right and unleashed a barrage of plasma that vaporized the leading traitor elements. Swinging their Corvus hammers, they drove full speed into the remainder of the diseased Marines, felling the last of them and fishtailing around to approach the chaplain.
Interrogator Chaplain Samuel, I believe you called for Talon Strike? Greeted Lucas. Indeed, Brother Sergeant. You are not a moment too soon. The target may escape without our immediate action. Our less enlightened brothers are holding the main assault to the west, while we launch our assault here from the flank. With only Astra Militarum here, they have only lightly defended this approach. Samuel pointed with a black-armored hand, turning his skull helmet to face into the Death Guard ranks. Your prey is that one, their so-called contagious lord. I suspect that used to be Terminator armor he's wearing, so he will be even tougher than the standard rank and file of this filth. His finger picked out an enormous figure wielding a saw-edged scythe, standing above the others by dint of size, as well as a wicked horn sprouting from the forehead of his helmet. He was flanked by two more brutes wielding their own scythes, similarly armored death-shroud bodyguards who would lay down their own corrupted lives for their lord. His head turned back to Lucas, glowing red lenses blazing in the deep eye sockets. We will do what we can to clear a path for you, but no matter the cost, you must engage him. My armor's machine spirit is transferring his profile information to yours. You know what to do. Lucas bowed his head. I do, Interrogator Chaplain. For Caliban that was, and the Lion. He revved his bike and spun it to face the waiting Death Guard. Behind him, his squad formed up in a V formation. Samuel switched his Vox to external, amplified. Commander, I need your artillery to fire on the following coordinates. A thin, mustachioed man turned nervously to the chaplain. There? But our barrage is pinning down their own tanks. If we turn our fire away, they'll be free to roll right over us. Samuel didn't even look down at the human. He simply spoke as if to air. I am not in the custom of repeating myself, Commander. You may either give the order and face those tanks beside me, or die here and now as I crush your skull like a ration pack and give the order myself. The soldier gulped, and even more blood drained from his face. Then he hurried away, barking orders into his Vox mic. When the barrage begins, that is your signal. Go with the Lion, Lucas, said Samuel, who then marched off to join the front lines. Moments later, the shells began to fall. Explosions of dust and muck hurled Death Guard into the air, and where it did not slay them, it at least disrupted their orderly formations. With a roar of throat and engine, the Black Knights sped forward towards their prey. Ordnance blasts continued all around them as they jinked back and forth at full throttle. Bursting through the smoke and fumes, they were met with a hail of bolter fire from the remaining heretics. Nakim was punched from his saddle in a chain of mass-reactive detonations stitching along his chest. 40 meters. Thinning their numbers with plasma bolts, the bikers went full throttle through the noisome Astartes, swinging their hammers in broad arcs, throwing traitors away from their path. Heroth was slowed by a plague marine hurling himself across his bike's front tire, and even as the bloated traitor squelched underneath, more of them surrounded him, until Heroth was pulled down beneath a pile of corroded armor and rusting blades. 30 meters. Sporadic bolter fire followed them as they swerved evasively through the last stretch. Samuel bellowed inspirational hymnals and cursing invective as he led the guardsmen in their desperate, asymmetrical stand against the Death Guard tanks. 10 meters. The Death Shroud stepped forward to meet them, interposing their solid mass between the Black Knights and their lord. Lucas, Magnuel, and Tarsius fired their plasma talons again, watching the bolts splash harmlessly against the moist, fungal plates of armor. Magnuel shot forward, skidding his bike sideways and laying it down in a power slide, ducking under the side swing that would have decapitated him. His hammer came around in the same motion, blasting the Death Shroud off its feet in a momentum-assisted power field impact. Tarsius, who had lost his hammer in the mob behind them, opened a Vox channel.
Expunge our shame, Brother Sergeant,
he said with notable calm. Then his bike shot ahead as well.
We are vengeance!
He spat into the face of the remaining bodyguard as the whine of his engine was overtaken by the whine of his overloading plasma talons. He slammed into the unyielding bulk of the Death Shroud, the twin weapons detonating, reducing everything in a 1-meter sphere into fading black silhouettes. The way to the contagious Lord was open. Now. The hulking Terminator braced his arms against his chest and hunched as the bike slammed into him, crumbling against the corroded yet indomitable armor. Lucas leapt from the saddle, one hand reaching behind him, the other outstretched to grab onto the horned helmet. Ha! Lucas held tight and swung around to the back of the traitor, his other hand slamming down on the shoulder plate as he passed over, then swiftly drawing his combat knife. He stabbed downward into the neck seals, foul mists leaking out as the knife cut through, then bounced off rubbery flesh beneath. The Lord straightened explosively, throwing his arms outstretched, scattering the bike remnants and flinging Lucas off. The Raven-Wing Sergeant landed hard on his back, taking only a moment to gather his wits before flipping over and getting his limbs under him to rise and fight once more. A piercing, throbbing pain shot through his body as the Lord's scythe punctured his spine and pinned him to the ground. His breath spurted out of him with a misting of blood as he collapsed. He heard twin thunders pounding in his head, one of his struggling heartbeats, the other the tread of the Terminator closing on him. As the blade was jerked from his torso, Lucas mustered his strength and turned onto his back to face his killer.
Pathetic thin blood, know that you die in shame and failure, as did the lion.
The rusted scythe drew back in an overhanded swing. A burbling, wet chuckle bubbled up from the Dark Angel. Your colors have changed, and your true nature is worn on the outside, but do not think we do not know you. I name you Yarukim, fallen angel, and your judgment is at hand. The Terminator Lord stiffened in surprise, the weapon halting. Lucas reached up and tapped his shoulder pauldron in the same place as his hand had slammed down on the fallen angel of Nurgle. Yarukim looked over, and there, clinging magnetically to his armor, was a teleportation beacon. The light on it blinked wrathfully. Lucas' last breath wheezed through blood-inked teeth and past grinning lips as his head lolled to the right. The last image he witnessed was a bright burst of light, out of which stepped the warriors of the Deathwing.
How long has it been?
2 3/4 hours and still no signal, Navigator.
The Navigator jolts forward and slams his hand down on the transmit button.
This isn't funny anymore, Zephyr. You win, okay? You win the game!
The startled officers pull him back, and he collapses in a heap on the floor.
This isn't funny.
He begins to sob. Cape snapping behind him, the Space Marine captain burst from the building into the stormy air on twin pillars of flame, followed by an assault squad. His power sword crackled as their chainswords revved, while the tactical squads below them in the trenches laid down covering fire of bolt gun and frag missile. The Knights Mortalis were charging. 2 expressionless eyes followed their arc upwards, though if they could have an expression, it would probably be boredom. Imhotep the Storm Lord, recently arrived on Vigilus, had seen this particular maneuver several dozen times before. These Space Marines were so predictable. Could they not think beyond the precepts of their holy book? Their Codec? Imhotep racked his memory for the name, while absently calling his warriors and Lichguard forward. Gaussfire pulled down 2 of the jump pack Marines mid-air, and the warriors' bludgeoning rifles dealt with a third. He barely noted his Lichguard slaying a 4th, then falling to the remaining assault Marine and the captain.
Codex, that was it,
he recalled, as he slammed his bladed staff into the onrushing Marine, cleaving him from collarbone to opposite hip. He looked up and saw the leader salute him with his sword as lightning flashed dramatically around them. With a cybernetic sigh, he raised his staff to shoot the captain. He had no time, nor inclination, for an insultingly brief duel right now. The captain parried the staff, and the blast pulverized a rock a few meters away.
Interesting.
Imhotep threw himself into the fight, now that there was even a chance of a worthy opponent. The sword's power field flared against his staff's own arcane energy field as they struck, parried, riposted. Within a split-second breaks in their attacks, Imhotep called forth his doomsday arcs to deal with the squad still entrenched and firing. The arcs unleashed their cannons, blasting the Marines apart despite their cover. Missiles streaked out in return, only to detonate harmlessly a few feet from their targets against the quantum shielding each arc generated. The Marines scattered, minimizing the effects that the cannons could achieve, forcing the arcs to close in to use their flare arrays. The Marines died to a man, their guns having slightly more effect against the shielding.
Parry, thrust, reverse.
From the streets on either side, 4 Predator tanks rolled out from camouflage covering, 2 on each flank. Their primitive slug-thrower turrets and sponsons were ironically too low yield for the advanced quantum shields to defend against, as they worked best against high-power weapons. And first one arc crashed to the ground to fire, then another was crippled and listing.
Thrust, slash, backslash, block.
Imhotep was saddened by this new offensive, pedestrian as it was. With a moment's thought, he called up the squadron of Night Shroud fighters in the swollen, darkened clouds overhead, and they began their bombing runs. One by one, the tanks exploded, for no amount of simple armoring could withstand the might of Necron technology. It was time to end this tedious farce. He waited for the predictable parry, feint, beheading cut sequence that these transhumans so loved to use, and readied himself to turn the parry into a beheading slash of his own while the fool feinted.
There. Parry, feint, and...
Imhotep was surprised as his staff cut empty air. The captain had triggered his flight pack, rocketing backwards instead of attacking. He was disengaging. That unpredictable, cowardly wretch! As the boost pushed the Marine higher, Imhotep called up his magnetic targeting engrams and focused the storm around them into a single bolt of lightning. It grounded out through the captain, scorching armor, bubbling flesh, and detonating jump pack fuel. The armored warrior crashed to the ground a few meters away, smoldering and sparking. Imhotep wished his metallic skull could sneer as he haughtily strode to the fallen foe. The Marine had pulled off his helmet, revealing the peeling, blistered face beneath, a full third of it now bare bone. Even this warrior's face now mocked him with insincere, accidental imitation. The Stormlord was surprised again to find the captain laughing. He peered down imperiously and cocked his head. Might as well indulge the poor thing before it died. It drew a rattling breath.
I accept your surrender, you poor imitation of humanity.
Cracked lips peeled back in a rictus grin.
More mockery. Your warriors are dead. Your attack will not be remembered as anything but a footnote, if at all. Now, join them in ignominious oblivion.
The Marine coughed again and asked,
How long have we kept you here?
And flicked his head towards the buildings beyond the trenches. Only now did Imhotep notice the swiftly assembled steel barriers, the razor wire uncoiled, and the yellow armored bodies garrisoning them and the surrounding ruins. Further beyond, the daunting silhouette of an Astraeus hover tank slid into the avenue.
The Imperial Fists would have words with you,
wheezed the captain. Imhotep growled in frustration as he stamped down on the Marine's neck and summoned his destroyer pack. High above, in the vastness of space, a debris cloud began to spread. Once, the debris had been the stalwart Aegis, a mighty battleship. Now, it was scattered, twisted hunks of metal dotted liberally with the corpses of her crew. Plowing contemptuously through it came her killer. She had fought well, but there were few ships that could stand against the vengeful spirit, and none of them were here. Marneus Calgar had pulled the defense fleet back to regroup, and now the Chaos Fleet was free to enter Vigilus orbit. Below, panic reigned. Vicious flocks of Chaos Raptors descended from the skies, murdering and kidnapping at will. Even the last bastions and holdfasts of humanity were no longer safe, as the shadows above came to screeching, clawing life. The greatest of the Imperium's defenders, the Space Marines, held the line against heretic Astartes and Necron alike, but only just. Their positions weakened by the hour, and no relief forces were on the way. On the plains outside Storvhall, a shimmering point of light appeared. It grew, accompanied by the shrieking of damned, tortured souls, growing louder in equal measure. From it stepped enormous, tusked, black-clad Terminators, who stomped forwards and spread out to cover every approach. These were the Justarin, the elite bodyguards of the one who would follow. Abaddon set foot on Vigilus. The very earth beneath his feet blackened and cracked, his very touch poison. With ancient, hateful eyes, he surveyed his conquest to be. He beheld those assembled to greet him, and his brows knotted in uncertainty. He had expected that arrogant snob Ahriman, or at least his own herald Harkon Worldclaimer, not World-Eaters. Looking for their leader, he focused on one of their blood priests. He braced himself to endure more sermons of blood and skulls along with vows of fealty from the Dark Apostle, and was surprised once again as one of the towering knights that accompanied them lumbered forward. It leaned down with blazing, crimson eyes, and he noticed that it had a mouth of jagged, bloody teeth as it spoke to him.
I am Caradum, the Vengeful, the supremacy of Khorne, downfall of the Watch, and I welcome you to Vigilus.
Abaddon nodded, now sensing the demonic presence within the construct. At his hip, Draknien vibrated with a desire to test its might against this creature.
Its defenders are broken, their holdings ever shrinking. I have personally felled their greatest champion.
With this, the enormous right fist stretched out and opened gore-clotted fingers. A halberd, blade broken and haft-bent, clattered to the ground before the War Master. He'd seen its like before, wielded exclusively as a badge of office for the Watchmasters of the Death Watch. His eyebrow raised inquiringly, and his lip twitched into a little smile. The Demon Knight continued.
I am done with this world now. Do with it as you will, Despoiler.
It turned away and began lumbering into the wastes, its warband following it. The Justarin tensed and raised their weapons at the dismissiveness, preparing to avenge the insult to their master. Abaddon made a small cutting gesture with the talon on his arm, and the Terminators stood down. While it would be entertaining to test his might and the might of his chosen against these savage killers, it would be unproductive. He had a world to end, after all. One of his bodyguards picked up the broken spear and presented it to him. He gripped it, appraised it for a moment, and then drove it into the ground before him. Soon, all of Vigilus would be as defiled, broken, and discarded as this weapon. The teleporter energized again, and one by one, the War Master and his retinue vanished. A short distance away, Caradum's chainsword revved and tore a hole in the fabric of reality. It and its followers stepped into the rift to find their next field of slaughter.
All is in flux. The skeins of fate were shredded and torn asunder.
Kairos Fateweaver stared with all 4 eyes through the scrying portal it had created in the warp to observe the landfall of the War Master. Its form was even more in flux here, beyond what was normal for the Neverborn. Its form rippled and quaked around what were conceptually 2 heads, the only even vaguely constant thing about its form. If somehow a human were to observe this while simultaneously understanding the nebulous, ever-changing physical laws of the Imperium, they would define the fits, starts, and waverings as nervous fidgeting.
We were not there because Ahriman was there. But Ahriman was not there, and now the Blood God is ascendant. Our sight was clouded. But why? Magnus begins his ritual, and he calls his sons home. Ahriman will be there, but he is also here. Which is the true path of the future? Why can we not see it? The removal of the Gorwolf from the board opened the field for new players. Some are already here, their warp-blind minds trying to comprehend the stakes. Others have started their journey to aid those embattled. The Nachman Gauntlet and Vigilus rests on a fulcrum, teetering between salvation and destruction. The Nachman Gauntlet and Vigilus is resting on a fulcrum, teetering between salvation and destruction. Ahriman will be integral to his father or Vigilus, but cannot be for both. And he is but one element in the future, which is shrouded from us. Why does the Changelord forsake us? Our vision has never been clouded before. Without clarity to alter events to our advantage, we will not continue to cast about in the dark like some mortal and leave Vigilus to its fate. With clarity, I see that had the coming faithful left 2 days earlier, they would have crossed us in the warp, and we would have been destroyed. I see the dock worker who crashed his cart, destroying vital supplies that had to be replaced. He crashed because he was tired from comforting his mate, who had learned his parents on Vigilus were killed. His mate learned that from an astropathic transmission that was not intercepted by the absent Ahriman. Ahriman's absence spared us from dissolution. Then we are incorrect in departing. If we cannot proceed with clouded vision, yet the clouded vision is what allows us to remain and avoid annihilation, then all is as planned. All is as planned.
Imperator, protect us! The Imperium topples! Chaos is victorious!
Vigilus burns.
This is Astropath Tertius Armand Deloitte of the Lunar Choir of Neophelum. Astropath Primus Arcan and Secundus Brindle have been killed in the Despoilers bombardment. We are dying. If there are any loyal to the Emperor who can hear me, I beg you.
This planet is claimed in the name of Abaddon, despoiler of worlds. Know that you will kneel before him, or you will burn.
Hold to your faith, citizens of Vigilus. The God Emperor, Master of mankind, has not forsaken you. We bring fury and fire to cleanse your world. Raise your voices in the hymn of the unclean rebuked, for the sisters of the Order of the Turris in Pharos are coming. Salvation and atonement are at hand.